Okay, so you're looking for a new open world game right now, or maybe you just want to take a break from Cyberpunk or whatever, whilst you wait for Phantom Liberty to come in September. A palate cleanser, perhaps, and you could do worse than turning the clock back a decade or so and plunging into the underworld of Hong Kong. This particular game is 11 years old at the time of this video, but boy does it hold up. You know, it's wooden in some places, sure, the driving and some of the open world is a bit blocky, but it makes up for it where it really counts. Voice acting, script, performance, the narrative in general, and combat are all top notch. The fighting system is fluid, crisp, and an absolute joy. I mean, it's right up there with the Arkham games. I captured this footage on the original version, but you can get 2014's definitive edition for €20 right now. It carries overwhelmingly positive reviews, and honestly, even the original version could pass for a 2023 AA game release visually.
You must be a very dangerous man, Wei Shen.
Whilst I don't need to tell you about the graphics, you can see them here. For me, still to this day, Sleeping Dogs has excellent, if not slightly dated, visuals that really do display Hong Kong's nightlife in such a vibrant and vividly lit kind of way. You know, kind of what we like from the cyberpunk genre. But I know it's subjective, and you can all see for yourself, so make your own minds up there. As with other Square Enix games of the era, it suffers from that old black shadow around all the objects. There's some name for it, I forget. It gives things more of a 3D look, but it's quite stylistic and not really to my taste these days, but it's easily overlooked. The acting and the story, and you know if you've seen my other reviews, these are things which hook me the most, is in a word, excellent. I'd actually forgotten just how good it was. A GTA competitor, or probably more accurately a Yakuza competitor, with more grown-up sensibilities, I think, and less parody or melodrama. This has actually a great cast. The dialogue is not cheesy, and everything from voiceover to body language to facial expressions is brilliantly performed and captured well by 2020 standards. The camera work and conversations remind me of Cyberpunk as opposed to, say, you know, a Bethesda game. Story-wise, this is your classic undercover crime caper where a cop infiltrates the criminal underworld, you know, that sort of thing. Nothing hugely innovative, but competent and enthralling as you'd expect if you're into that kind of thing. I've seen some people say the side missions are repetitive, but this is typical with open world games. Talk of repetitive, have you tried to actually 100% Hogwarts Legacy? In fact, this, at my age, and even as a fan of Harry Potter, is much more engaging. The characters and the maturity of it is much more my speed. There's only so much of polite teenage school-going wizard students talking nicely to each other that I can take, really.
What kind of grade school shit is this, huh? I work my ass off all day, so fuck off and grow up.
And I've just not been compelled to actually complete the what I would consider lackluster main the one type of story. When I do finally get around to completing it, I'll write a review. It's a great game, but it's by no means perfect. And the things that it fails at for me are the things that are most important to me. But we'll get onto that another time. It looks gorgeous, it plays amazingly, but yeah, it's just lacking in some areas. But back to Sleeping Dogs, if I haven't lost you. This is testament to why this still gets my recommendation today. I installed this purely to capture some footage because I wanted to review it, remembering it fondly. And I didn't want to stop playing. I genuinely wish I had the time to carve out for it. This didn't get a sequel, unfortunately, criminally overlooked in a way you could say, but it wasn't a financial success, at least after the promising start. But it remains to be seen exactly why it flopped, but we'll get into that in a bit. Did I finish it? Hell yeah. Should you play it now or wait for the remake? Play it. I have zero reservations fully recommending this to any of my audience or anyone new here. The jank that does exist is due to age and overlookable, I think, you know, especially once you get into the main story. Set your current graphical sensibilities aside and enjoy the fact that it still looks great where it really matters. General ambience of the environment and characters, etc. Now, if this is your first time here, firstly, you're very welcome. And if you're still not sure about the game, a great place to start is this review here, as it will give you an idea of where I'm at, my perspective, my experience, and what kind of games and what element of games I really appreciate. That way you'll know if we're on the same page moving forward. So that's a short review, and for those of you interested in the game's history and why it didn't get a sequel, more, stick around. So Sleeping Dogs was the spiritual successor to the true crime game, New York and LA being the ones I remember. I think one even had Snoop Dogg in it, so it was a GTA competitor or a Yakuza competitor with far superior fighting pedigree in my opinion. Having actually started life as a true crime title before it was cancelled by Activision, it was then picked up and rebranded by Square Enix as Sleeping Dogs. But unfortunately in 2013 after release, a sales report named Sleeping Dogs along with other titles like the Tomb Raider reboot and Hitman Absolution as failures due to the fact that they failed to reach respective sales targets. But this had less to do with the game's actual quality as much as I think timing and other factors. I mean, it sold millions of copies in the first few months and got both critical and gamer praise. But this kind of revenue fail is everything in big business. That's what leads to future games or IPs being ostensibly shelved or sold off to smaller developers who are better positioned to take a risk. Sleeping Dogs initially looked to be one huge hit. It was actually a best-selling title in the first week of its release, but then sales inexplicably, I suppose, dropped dramatically and suddenly, and Square Enix deemed it such a commercial disappointment that the CEO of the time resigned. Then, a bit more risk-averse, Square Enix decided to move forward with well-rooted and more established IPs like Final Fantasy XIV, as these would be a little less risky given their established fan bases. Interestingly today, and I know it's not necessarily always accurate, but Wikipedia lists Sleeping Dogs as, and I quote, a critical and commercial success. But if it was a critical and commercial success, then we'd have a sequel now. So what is the truth? Perhaps the long-tail nature of Steam sales has since turned things around in the long run, and that might bode well for its future, but we'll have to wait and see.
It's supposed to be a kung fu school, but I'm totally lost. I have no sense of direction.
Yeah, I think I know where it is. I mean, it's not too far. I can give you a ride. I mean, it'll be easier than explaining where it is.
Okay, yeah, that'd be really great.
United Front Games, the Canadian developer responsible for it and involved in other games like the Master Chief Collection, which was, I guess, more of a repackaging in collaboration with 343 Industries, were shuttered in 2016 whilst in the midst of developing their newest game, Smash and Grab. According to Patrick Lepec of Vice, they even started to work on the sequel to Sleeping Dogs, but it was cancelled before going into full production. He'd spoken to two sources and had documentary evidence to prove this. A snapshot from one of the documents even shows the potential for a co-op focus. A co-op open world crime action game with a strong narrative and acting and great melee combat. You could arrest people as well. Any NPC, in fact, that was one of the mechanics they were going for, along with a branching storyline and some very interesting living world and quality of life adjustments that happened throughout the game. It sounded like it would be a very rich environment to play in, but I'm not going to go into any other torturous details about a game that never was and might never still be, but the link to Patrick's original article is in the description below. Worth a read if you want to know even more details. There's some fascinating and truly ambitious ideas, even by today's standards, I think. And, this is the kind of thing that developers never share, as only a portion of them ever make it into a finished game due to time, budget, or technical limitations, which is a mistake one of my favorite developers learned the hard way not so long ago and thankfully have addressed. But it makes for a fascinating read nevertheless for anyone interested in this space. So why was it axed when it wasn't alone in failure? I mean, we got more Tomb Raider games and Hitman, so my guess is that these are more established brands and safe bets. Well, at least they were for a while. I mean, it's fairly standard for companies to back an established IP that has an established fan base. So it's probably a story of 3 failures and we need to axe one. Buy the new, yet still kind of old IP. Competition is key too. Hitman rules its genre, just like GTA rules the contemporary narrative open world crime game genre, closely probably followed or even matched by Yakuza games. And as for Tomb Raiding, well, less than you count my boy Nate. Lara's still kind of got that genre sewn up, to a degree, at the time at least. Sleeping Dogs had to be the one to go, I think. Now, let me be clear, this is conjecture, but it's of the educated variety, I think. There is also the fact that massive open world games cost an absolute fortune, whereas a linear game like Tomb Raider without all the additional mechanics, whilst still very, very expensive, are substantially less when you take apples for apples comparisons into account, same tier of quality for example. Something that is known is that Sleeping Dogs actually did go through several years of development hell to reach shippable stage, and many involved in it weren't prepared to go through that again for the sequel. It seems like a combination of factors were in play, but even still, United Front were still game, even with the churn. Squeenix didn't want to let go just yet though, and they did work with them on a few more projects, like Triad Wars, which was a Sleeping Dogs spin-off without the best part of the game. So it didn't even reach beta, let alone launch, which is probably another signal to the powers that be that we don't want more Sleeping Dogs, but we do. They closed their doors then without so much as a fanfare. I'd imagine though if Square Enix had doubled down on a Sleeping Dogs sequel, then things could have been very different, especially given some of the ways it could have expanded the game.
I read about your school in my guidebook.
Your guidebook.
So where does this leave us with regards to a sequel? Could Square Enix be watching the GTA space and how lucrative it is with an eye to be developing something in secret? What about the huge gap between GTA 5 and GTA 6? What a time to launch their game, with fans still clamoring for GTA 6. Just imagine Sleeping Dogs filling that hole and reaching a whole new audience starving for that kind of thing. And I'm not referring to those completely content living with the online element of GTA 5. I mean, there really is nothing else to fill that gap right now for me. You know, you do have Saints Row, but the Saints Row games just aren't in the same league. It tries too much to hit ludicrous comedy beats, and it's a fun play and forget kind of title, I think. And I've never been compelled by the narrative to finish a Saints game, like I have, say, GTA or Sleeping Dogs. But then Saints and GTA just do not do melee combat anything remotely as well or accomplished or in-depth as Sleeping Dogs. And yes, okay, ease up, Yakuza does exist, I'm well aware of it, but it's an odd beast, and I've tried several times to get into it. For me, the acting and the scripts is just overly melodramatic. The scenes are long-winded, and it sometimes can feel like a lot like a bunch of mini-games strung together at times. And now, you know, the series is moving more away from its kind of baked-in action combat roots for more turn-based kind of RPG battles. So the gap really kind of is still there. I think Judgment was a Yakuza spin-off, which kind of kept the melee combat center stage, but I still kind of rate Sleeping Dogs over it. You'd know when you play the two of them and compare. And again, you know, I just found the same issues with the other things I mentioned about Yakuza with Judgment, so it became impenetrable for me. But I really should give that one a shot again, I think. Maybe I didn't give it long enough. But for me, Sleeping Dogs was the Yakuza game I wanted, and I should just clarify any potential cultural insensitivity-based misunderstanding about that comment. I'm well aware that Yakuza is Japan and the Triad is Hong Kong, and they're two different and often confused gangs, and however, they carry a similar tone for me and vibe, whilst obviously being culturally very distinct in a number of ways. We cool? God, I hope so, don't cancel me. So, current belief is that Square Enix do actually still own the rights, and that would be the smart play in my opinion, because I think it's the thing that has the most legs. But according to True Achievements, again, link is in the description as with the other article. There's still a question over that though, because in May 2020, Square sold off many of its Western studios, including Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal to the Embracer Group, which is a group of global entrepreneurial businesses in the games industry that provide studios with resources they need to develop games, and currently has over, I think, 850 IPs and something like 140 studios under their wing. Like, that's massive. And these IPs included in the aforementioned sale include things like Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, and Legacy of Kain, and apparently more than 50 other back catalogue games, but there's no mention if Sleeping Dogs is one of those. The deal was for $300 million, or as I like to call it, GTA 5 plus change. GTA 5 costing, what was it, $265 million to develop? So selling all those IPs off for $300 million sounds like actually a really good deal for whoever bought them. And perhaps it's a really good deal for Square Enix, because whilst they say, and this is quoting them, that the transaction enables the launch of new businesses by moving forward with investments in fields such as blockchain, AI, and the cloud, the fantasists in me would actually like to think that was all smoke and mirrors, and what they meant to say was, we sold this so that we could afford to secretly make a new cash cow like GTA 5 in the form of Sleeping Dogs 2. Or maybe they could call it Waking Dogs, I don't know.
Might as well try everything once, right?
I've been a bad girl today, Wei. I may need to be disciplined.
But yeah, I know it's a fantasy, but let me have it. But maybe after flop Avengers, talk about fucking up a sure thing, Christ. It's possible that they're just fed up of developing games and see AI as the future, but stick to the games, please. I don't want a dystopian future for realsies, thank you very much. The interesting thing is, as far as I can find, they nor Embracer have stated if SD was part of the IP in that package. So my game-addled brain says that the smart money is on that being one IP to hang on to. But, you know, I'm I'm dreaming, probably. But no matter who has it, they better make use of it. If Square are to believe in the direction, then it has no chance if they still have it. But if my fantastical predictions are correct, then it could have been an all or nothing Hail Mary. I'm doing the bunny ears here. On the other hand, if Embracer do have it and there's enough passion for it, then maybe somebody will get a shot at it. But I'm guessing fan and gamer interest would be a key driver here. And there's another problem that I see with it being with Embracer, because there'll be no in-baked respect for it or passion for it. And open world games with melee combat are so rare that the developers that actually work in them are very few. You know, you've got the likes of Rocksteady, who created the Batman games, Insomniac, who are doing the Spider-Man games. They would be very capable, but they are nothing to do with Embracer. They're tied to Warner Brothers and Sony respectively, so they'd need to find existing devs with a passion for it or others willing to pick up the mantle. And although United Front Gaming are gone, I wonder if any of the original team are still around and interested and available. I'd be curious to know where they dispersed to, but my money is on such a talented bunch being entrenched in some other projects right now and probably not interested. But even today, the mechanics of the existing game are fantastic. They're a lot more grounded than the likes of Batman and Spider-Man as well. So the basis is there to work on without having to reinvent the wheel, but I guess that depends on who has the source code. And that is going to be a huge linchpin of the game, because the combat, as I said in my short review at the start, is one of the main reasons Sleeping Dogs stood out like it did at launch. So finding a team capable of doing that would be paramount. Then just bring back the cast. Will Yun Lee, Donnie Yen, Emma Stone et al., and get writing and mocapping. Speaking of Donnie Yen, you might not have been aware that he owns the rights to the title in motion picture form, or movies I believe they call him now, even with him at the helm though. And as the leading role, it's struggling to get off the ground financially still. They were talking about it a couple of years back, but it's been silent since. It would be a great action movie, and I just see it as having the potential to be a decent franchise that could come back from the dead and dominate. Who knows, if I'm still doing this 5 years time, I might be reviewing it in all its Unreal 5 engine glory and buying tickets to the movie adaptation, so I'd be well up for that. But yeah, it's a tight niche, really only occupied by a couple of game series. So maybe give it a shot and see what you think. As you saw from my review, it gets my wholehearted recommendation, even at a decade old. Not even something you need to wait for a reboot for. And if you like it like I do, maybe make your feelings known on Steam or wherever. Cry out for a sequel. You know, the fact that Square Enix was happy to remaster Sleeping Dogs in 2014 for the PC as well as PlayStation and Xbox platforms really does show that they care about the IP in some way and maybe respect its potential worth. So perhaps it would have been one of the IPs they retained and might have the passion to actually put work back into it again. And I'm happy to put my voice forward as someone who would dearly love a return to Wei Shen's story. The fact that I'd even forgotten what a great game it was speaks to something though. Whether it be just an embarrassing wealth of riches in gaming that beat it out of my brain with a restaurant shutter finisher, or maybe there's something slightly off with the game that a full replay hasn't revealed, but that all remains to be seen. So one thing I will say, if you are a PC gamer, you have a window with which to return it, and I guarantee you that the game will reveal enough of itself to hook you in those 2 hours. And if I'm wrong, and I don't think I will be, you can get your money back and unsubscribe to me and grumble to everyone about how I cost you a couple of hours of your life, but you won't be doing that. Anyway, did you play it? Are you intending on playing it? Would you like a sequel?